Hello, a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on this week's programme, the drums of war in the Persian Gulf. The White House is reviewing military plans against Iran. This comes after Tehran threatened to scale back its commitment to the nuclear deal as the other side failed to deliver its end of the bargain. Eurovision gets political, as it does every year. The song contest is being hosted in Israel after deadly fighting between the country's army and militant forces from Gaza. Also coming up, we'll be speaking to Aurélie Clément-Ruiz, the curator of an exhibition at the Arab World Institute, which is bringing together the worlds of football and politics in the region. Thank you for watching Middle East Matters. We start with rising tensions between Tehran and Washington, which have reached new heights. According to the latest reports, Donald Trump's national security team have been presented with plans to send as many as 120,000 troops to the region. This amid a tit-for-tat row concerning the contentious nuclear deal clinched in 2015, which Iran has been complying with. The other side so far failing to provide economic relief for the country as agreed in that accord.
The damage to the hull of this vessel is being called an act of sabotage. It is one of 4 ships damaged over the last few days off the coast of the UAE port of Fujairah, one of the largest oil terminals in the region. 2 Saudi oil tankers, a United Arab Emirates cargo ship and a Norwegian registered vessel were targeted. Details about how the alleged sabotage attacks took place are unclear. One thing is certain, though, they heightened tension yet another notch in an area near the Persian Gulf Strait of Hormuz, the world's main oil shipping lane.
What happened is undoubtedly a cause of concern. The area is full of maritime movement of oil tankers and other cargo ships. It's a vital sea corridor. The concern international organizations and other countries have shown is truly justified.
Washington last week warned vessels entering the area against possible attacks led by Iran or its allies, without presenting proof of threats. Iran, meanwhile, has called for a full investigation into the incidents and says it will defend itself if attacked. At the heart of the standoff between the two countries is Tehran's threat to scale back its nuclear deal commitments following US sanctions. The New York Times is reporting 120,000 troops could be deployed to the Middle East should tension escalate further. The US President Donald Trump issued a direct threat.
We'll see what happens with Iran. If they do anything, it will be a very bad mistake. If they do anything, I'm hearing little stories about Iran. If they do anything, they will suffer greatly. We'll see what happens with Iran.
US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met European allies in Brussels on Monday ahead of talks with Russia. The EU is currently trying to work out ways of keeping the Iran nuclear deal afloat. The US has stepped up its military presence in the region, moving in an aircraft carrier and deploying bombers to an airbase in Qatar.
Next to Yemen, where the warring parties, that's the Iran-aligned Houthi rebels and the Saudi-backed government, are taking a stab at breaking a 6-month stalemate. The two sides started fresh talks in Jordan this week, sponsored by the United Nations. The negotiations come after the Houthi forces began a long-awaited withdrawal from 3 ports. They are Salif, Ras Isa and Hodeidah, a main entry point for Yemen's commercial and aid imports. This is seen as a first step towards ending the civil conflict, which erupted back in 2014. This year, the Eurovision Song Contest is being hosted in Israel. The event, which brings together acts from 41 countries, not all European, is being clouded in political conflict and controversy. Some have even called for a boycott of the show. This comes after Israeli forces engaged in a deadly clash with militants in Gaza, leaving 23 Palestinians and 4 Israelis dead.
It was the usual glitz and glamour at this year's Eurovision Song Contest in Tel Aviv, as contestants from 41 countries came to greet their fans.
This is just crazy. This is nuts. I'm living the dream.
I love Israel, I love Tel Aviv, so I'm really happy to be here.
Outside the venue, there wasn't quite the same enthusiasm. A dozen activists sat on the road blindfolded, to protest against Israel's treatment of Palestinians.
We're here to protest culture washing, to say no to sparkles and glitter while Palestinians are under occupation, and to stand in solidarity with Gazans calling for the right of return.
Despite Israel's best branding efforts, this year's Eurovision Song Contest has been clouded in controversy. Pro-Palestinian activists, as well as dozens of international artists, called for broadcasters and performers to boycott the event. However, not a single contestant pulled out of the competition. Israel's public broadcaster, meanwhile, has been accused of propaganda after releasing a promotional video featuring shots of East Jerusalem's Temple Mount and referring to Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The video was also criticized by some Israelis for its portrayal of stereotypes about Jews in Israel, prompting the company to issue a statement stressing it was meant as satire.
Now here in Paris, the Institute of the Arab World is putting on an exhibition called Football in the Arab World, the Revolution of the Round Ball. And to talk about the role of the game in the region, I'd like to welcome the curator to Middle East Matters, that's Aurélie Clément-Ruiz. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Now, it feels like we are, I don't know whether you agree, but we're living in an age where anything can be politicized. Why did you decide to hone in on football in the Arab world in this exhibition?
In fact, football is so important in the Arab world, and nothing was done on that subject. So we have to. And so we work with a whole team dedicated to the subject, so historian, searcher, even specialists on immigration, to work on the link between football and the Arab world and see what we could present.
So you've got all these different angles. Tell us a little bit about the format. Of course, the exhibition is presented through 11 different iconic stories.
Yeah, we choose to find a way to present the link. And 11 story, as 11 players in a team, is a good opportunity to see really different countries, different stories, different people important in that subject.
And of course, that's something that you're drawing attention to, another subject. And this is something that tends to be very important to us here on Middle East Matters. It's drawing attention to the role of women in the region, and something that you've done with your exhibitions, look at football in Jordan.
In Jordan, yes, because Jordan is the only Arab country really with real politics dedicated to women in football. So young teenagers, young women, now they can really play football. They have their own stadium. They practice like even in competition. So it's really a good message, and it's also a way to have more freedom and also to change a little bit the mentality of the society there.
Lastly, Aurélie, we know that the World Cup is on course to take place in Qatar, of course, in 2022. The Qataris already control a football club here in Paris, that's Paris Saint-Germain. And there are reports that they contributed, they gifted, I don't know whether this is true or not, you'll tell us, I'm sure, 250,000 euros to the Arab World Institute for this exhibition. Is there any truth to this? And if there is, what was the reason behind it? What were they expecting in return?
Yes, it's true. In return, we will present the exhibition in Qatar next year. That's why. So for all the exhibition, we are looking for sponsors. And it's not the only, and it's not even the main sponsor of the exhibition. For example, the
money's
French...
coming from the Qatari government?
No, it's coming of the organization of the World Cup in 2022. So it's a little bit different. But for example, the French Football Federation is also one of our sponsors and partners in the exhibition.
Aurélie Clément-Ruiz, thank you so much for being with us and talking about this very interesting exhibition. Of course, if you happen to be in Paris and you want to pop over, it's going on until July 21st. Now, finally, moving on to another episode of Flavors of Iraq. This week, our protagonist's father returns to Iraq for the first time since the fall of Saddam Hussein.
In 2005, my father came to see me in Baghdad. It was his first time back since the fall of Saddam Hussein. He wanted to see what had become of his country. One morning, he went off on his own to a coffee shop. It used to be one of his haunts back in the day. By chance, he ran into two childhood friends from Fallujah. They reminisced about the summers spent diving into the Euphrates. Then, about university in Baghdad. They were all sociology students. They recollected the apartment they used to share in the district of Karada. They had parted ways when my father fled Saddam's dictatorship. The other two had stayed behind. It was the first time they'd seen each other in 33 years. More than 30 years of absence, but just a few minutes to catch up. One of his two friends had been accused by an insurgent group of working with the Americans. When he returned to France, my father did something he'd been putting off for years. After all this time in the country and two children born in Paris, he finally applied for French citizenship.
Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.
From North America to the southern tip of Patagonia, join us for a look at the latest political, economic, cultural and social news from the Americas.
Inside the Americas, presented by Jeannie Godula on France 24 and France24.com.